What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to lesson number 27, Flying Lessons from Silence, based on A Course in Miracles workbook, lesson number 27, Above All Else I Want to See. What does seeing mean here? Well, to me, what's been really helpful as I've worked through these lessons in the past and as I continue to work through them now, but from a more creative place as I've done before and I'm now sharing with all of you, wonderful folks, is that this is about immersion. So this is about immersing ourselves fully into the present moment. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't just mean necessarily the awareness, but the sensory experience of a moment, the sensory experience of it. What does it feel like? What is that? How does that present itself to you, right? That to me is being able to truly see from your heart space, because you're taking in so much information related to what's actually happening around you. And it gives you that pause so that your chatter, that the mental chatter has a moment to stop. And then it allows you to sink back into this beautiful presence and this beautiful place within you that is accessible every single day, every moment. This particular lesson says, in the workbook itself, the text says, vision has no cost to anyone. It can only bless. Now, I think about this in terms of, it just makes me smile because it's such a beautiful reminder, right? When you're looking at someone or beholding something, and I say beholding specifically because that's what you're doing. When you look at that thing and you behold it, you're really seeing someone or something for what and whom they are, as opposed to who you might have them be through your perspective. We start to see what our priorities are in seeing, in that vision, in that presence, right? We begin to see our priorities because what we see in other people is really about what our priorities are if we're outside of that present moment, if we're outside of seeing people where they are, as they are, whom they are, right? So what do we want to see? That's something else that this kind of pulls at and gets us to inquire about within ourselves. A good test of how you really want to align your priorities with what you're seeing and how you're seeing others and how you're holding space for them. A really good test of that is what choices you make on your path towards peace, on what choices you make to truly see someone or things as they are, as opposed to as you would have them be, through expectations, through judgment, through past stories about, present moment happenings. This is really the test of how that comes to be for us. And that test, it doesn't mean that we're judging ourselves or looking at how far off we are from that. This is just looking at the different ways that our path has taken different twists and turns, and how we've stayed the course with our intention to see people as they are and to see them from the heart space, to see them from here, as opposed to projecting something that's going on up here outward onto it. This lesson in particular, particularly with immersion, right? Immersion. What are we immersing ourselves into in terms of the present moment and our senses here and now in this exact present moment? How are we doing that? How are we immersing ourselves, right? I find that for me, it happens a lot of the time through silence. That's why I'll go into the woods on hikes and I just sit with the sounds around me and try to limit and go to places that are a little bit more removed from traffic noise or air traffic noise. Not to say that this is, this silent, landscape, this silent soundscape, as it were, is the thing that we all have to achieve, because we can do this wherever we are, right? But there's a book that I'm reading right now called Golden, How the Power of Silence in a World of Noise by Justin Zorn and Leigh Marz, and it is fantastic. I highly recommend it. It has so much insight to offer. It talks about how, in a way, we are kind of addicted to making noise. Straight out of the book, it says that, page 22, we're addicted to making noise. And they categorize noise and as having three kind of components here. So like the physical noise, like auditory, soundscape. And then we also have informational noise. So the things that come, the information that comes to us. And then also the internal noise that often goes on in our minds, which is usually, we can say that it's probably a safe bet to say that it's a byproduct of the world that we live in, requiring us to be always on. So like, when are you off, right? Just as an aside, when are you off? When do you give yourself the gift of being off? Just no one gets to you, and not in a way that no one gets under your skin. It's not like that. No one has access, so that you have time to quiet what's going on in here, and the noise up here and in here has a chance to catch up with where you are in your body, right? That's the kind of quiet that we're talking about. And this book is fantastic because it really is, it provides a roadmap, really. It provides a good roadmap of accessing that. So when I see, that's why it's flying lessons from silence, number one. Number two, above all else, I want to see. For this to be in the course, I think about how do we gain access to sight? What does sight truly mean? What does vision truly mean other than present moment awareness? So if we're in the present moment and bombarded with noise, we're immersing ourselves in a fraction of the awareness that we might otherwise be able to, grab hold of. And I think that a lot of that comes from immersing ourselves in a bit of silence every now and again. If you're a parent, you probably don't have the luxury of doing that so often. But I sleep with earplugs sometimes because I just want the quiet, right? It's such a soothing thing. And as a neurodivergent person, that is also, sensory expression and intake. It also is, silence is one of my best friends, or at least quiet, right? Finding those times to just be quiet and to quiet down. When's the last time you did that one thing that encompassed just all of your senses, right? For a lot of folks, this is creativity and this is art. That's why I'm so happy that it's part of this course in creativity, because we get bombarded with noise and it prevents us from seeing. And art is such a beautiful portal to gain access to the present moment. But more than that, it's a beautiful way for us to gain access to this deeper part of ourselves, because it's not just seeing things clearly. It's also being able to hold a vision and a communication with our inner selves and higher selves too, right? So this connection to spirit doesn't just happen. You really do have to cultivate it. So this immersion into silence it's almost like a baptism every single time it happens, and I went for a hike yesterday and I sat beside a waterfall, and it was so nice. It was loud, but it was surprisingly quiet. It was surprisingly quiet. Right, we had just had a huge rainstorm in the days before, and it was loud because the water was rushing, but it was so quiet. And we forget what noise can mean because we get so wrapped up in what we've immersed ourselves into, that present moment. It's difficult to conceive of the way that this lands if you've just always been busy. When's the last time you've driven somewhere without the radio on? Or an audiobook? Just in quiet. Just in the quiet of where you are in that moment. It can be really scary to be in the quiet, because all of the thoughts that you might use sound to push away in the form of projection or ego identity burst forward in those moments. There's no way to dress them up, because then you're faced with them right away. On page 38 of that book, the author talks about how silence is like an expansion within you, and noise is like the contraction of your energy. And it doesn't use energetics terms specifically, but the way that I see it is that, this silence expands inside of you, right? And it makes you feel like you're infinite. It makes you feel like you're connected to something so much bigger. And that's where we understand that's where you start to hear and to see things so clearly, because you're seeing with your heart. You're not seeing with, the stories and the ways that we take them in over time and build a repertoire of meaning based on them. So your creative spark for this particular lesson is a quote from the book on page 21, and I will read it to you now, which is, "Take a moment to return to the deepest silence you remember." So take a moment to return to the deepest silence you remember. And really bring yourself there. The sensory experience of it, drop into it. The deepest silence you remember. When was that? And work to cultivate that silence for sure, but just sit with that question. And there was a theologian, an Irish poet and theologian in the book that was quoted as saying that silence is where we begin to ask ourselves and feel comfortable asking ourselves strange questions. And, if you know me, that I'm a big fan of those. But also, what does that mean in terms of these strange questions of ourselves? What we begin to see is that this is not just a Course in Miracles thing, that the quiet and being able to see, really, they are deeply connected across different faiths, across different religious experiences, across belief systems, right? So above all else, I want to see, and flying lessons from silence. that is your lesson for today. May your day include much quiet that meets you where you are, my friends. If you liked this or it resonated, please like and subscribe. I'd love to have you on the channel. And as always, I am so appreciative of the energy that you bring here and your presence. So thank you for that. And of course, wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, I hope that it finds you very well, my friends. Take care.